and welcome back to another edition of the Kickstarter Weekly. Today's episode is going to look at crowdfunding campaigns that are completing their funding between October the 24th and the 30th. If you haven't been here before, then welcome. It's really good to have you with us. I'm going to be giving a little bit of a channel update at the end of the video, so if you want to stick around for that, you can. Some of the things that I'm going to be saying I've said in recent videos, so I don't want to be repeating myself and making anyone sit through it again, but there will be some more information, including the fact that I, today, for the very first time, am shooting with a new ring light. I can't really tell while I'm shooting how it's going to affect the quality of the video, but I think the lighting will be better, so let me know what you think. It's also a piece of equipment that I think will help me as I start to shoot teach and review videos again. It'll be able to give me better lighting in a lot of different circumstances. And the way that this ring light works, it's very adaptable, and there are a lot of ways to use it as a tripod, and I think get lighting into places where it may be hard otherwise to get lighting when you're shooting on a board and things like that. So I think it's going to be really helpful as we move forward, and it's really the first piece of equipment, probably in a long line, that I'm going to be adding to my lighting and camera setup. So let's get moving with the rest of the video. I've got 3 played games to talk about today. Then I'll be going over 3 campaigns that are currently running that will be funding next week when I'm shooting this week as you're watching this. 2 games that I personally pledged that I covered in last week's video, and 2 new arrivals into my collection since the last time we talked. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. That is the best way to support this channel at this time. Also leave me comments about what you think I'm doing right and what you'd like to see more of. So the first of the games that I played this period is Caverna. I played it a couple weeks ago and I'd watched some videos about it, but I hadn't fully read the rule books, and there's so many moving pieces in Caverna that there were certain things that I didn't know as I was playing that I was trying to figure out, like vegetables, which look like a pumpkin resource, and I couldn't really figure out how to get vegetables. There's no way in what you're doing normally in the game to get vegetables. However, if you acquire a weapon onto one of your meeples and then go hunting with that meeple, you can acquire vegetables. Then you will have vegetables in your inventory. You can plant that, sow that in your fields, and produce more vegetables. And vegetables are a really good resource to have. They provide more food than wheat, and if you have a cooking cave, which I got a cooking cave this time we played, you're able to combine the vegetables with the grain and make even more food. So that was kind of one thing that I was trying to figure out the first time through. I knew about the weapons, I knew you could go adventuring, but I didn't realize that the only place that you can get the vegetables are from adventuring initially. Now, the first time I played Caverna a couple of weeks ago, I used a strategy that I'd seen someone else employ to get wood and stone resources and kind of have them generating throughout the game. And I think that was a really good thing to do on my first play. It sort of kept me from painting myself into a corner, but I wanted to see what I could do this game on my own. And the thing that I really wanted to do, because this is essentially a worker placement game, I wanted to get as many workers as I could. And there's a family action that you can take to do that where you produce a child. But there are a lot of prerequisites to making that happen. Like, you already have to have a room built and set up for that extra worker before you produce them. And I was also trying to coordinate that with food. I wanted to get a certain number of fields planted and a certain amount of vegetables harvested before I started to produce children and bring in more workers. Because if you can't feed your workers, you have to take these penalty tokens, and there's no way to remove them once you do. So I saw the potential for getting a lot of workers going early on to create problems if I didn't have food to feed them, because I might end up taking a lot of these tokens. But it created a bottleneck in terms of what I wanted to try to do. I was trying to plant my fields very efficiently, and in order to make that happen, I had to kind of put off having children, extra workers, until very late in the game. It kept getting pushed off. And I think that's something about Caverna in general, is that you go in with all of these plans, but until you do produce more children, which is not easy to do, you only have 2 turns per round. So you find yourself with all of these grand plans and all of these things that you want to do, and a very limited way to do that. I think it can be frustrating. I think it was a little frustrating for me in the first play, but the more that I play that and the more that I come to, I think, accept that, the easier it will make it for me to build my engine, because I'll have a more realistic idea of what can be done and what can't be done. But Caverna definitely is a game where there is just a wealth of things for you to do and no way for you to do all of it or even most of it. So you do kind of have to pick a path and follow that path and work with certain goals. Now, a lot of times in games, I'll use goals like individual goal cards or goal cards for the rounds and things like that to help me choose what I'm going to pursue, because usually you'll get rewards for doing that. There's not really anything like that in Caverna. There are cards that come out. I believe they come out in different orders every time you play. I think it's randomized. So every time you go into a new round, and in our 2-player game, it's 11 rounds, you're going to get a new action space. So I think you could try to tailor your strategy to the spaces that are coming out. But there are so many spaces in the game and so many things to do. You don't really need to be limited to that. I guess it just gives you more options, more pathways that you could take. And because it is a worker placement game, it is possible to get boxed in where the other players are taking the actions that you want to take so that you can't. Now, that hasn't really happened to me. I've gotten very, very lucky in our games where the things that I've wanted to do, I haven't been blocked by and I've been able to do, which is a really nice situation to be in. Nevertheless, Caverna is so tight, I still haven't really been able to fulfill my plans. Now, all of this said, I was very happy with the way that I played. I was able to fill up all of the spaces on the board, which isn't necessarily easy to do. And at the end of the game, for every space that you haven't built something on, you'll lose a point. I also did get 4 of the 5 possible workers in the game. I would have liked to have gotten 5, and I would have liked to have gotten them much earlier in the game because that gives you more actions. But I didn't really get my 3rd and 4th worker until late in the game. I never got my 5th worker, so I really didn't end up getting too many additional actions over the course of the game. I think what I'm going to do next time is I'm just going to really try to produce those workers, even if that means taking on those negative tokens. I mean, I'll try not to do that, but I'm not going to shy away from it if I need to. I'm really going to try to lean into getting those workers early and having a lot of additional actions, unless the way the game is going doesn't allow me to do that, and then I will bend like the willow and do what I can with the way the game is going. But I think that's going to be my intended strategy for the next time that I play. Now, I like Caverna more than the first play because I actually knew what I was doing this time completely. One of the things I didn't understand the first time around was the vegetables. There were a couple other things. I think one of the things that I didn't realize this game that kind of slowed me up a bit is that when you go to produce a child, at least early in the game, it's called a wish for children. And later on that card flips and becomes an urgent wish for children. But either way, when you're taking that action, you have to build a chamber. Now, I did not have the resources to build a sleeping chamber when I wanted to take that action. I'd already built it earlier because I wanted to have that sleeping chamber there. I thought you only had to build a furnished room in your cavern, and I had intended to build that kitchen where once it's built, you can combine vegetables and wheat for additional food. So I had just enough stone and wood to build that building, not enough stone and wood to build another sleeping chamber. So that kind of gunked up what I was trying to do. But now I have a better idea, and I know that if you're doing that wish for children, the one that's earlier in the game, you need to be building a sleeping chamber when you're taking that action. So it's another thing I think that will make my engine building a little cleaner and a little easier, having some of those little rules understood as I'm playing it. I still think this is the game that I'm going to prefer over Agricola, because Agricola is another Uwe Rosenberg game. It's even tighter than this one. And I think Agricola is a little tighter than I would like. Caverna is still pretty tight, even though there are a lot of options and things that you can do. It's still pretty tight. Now, I did enjoy Caverna more. I think last time we played, I rated it a 7.0. I'm going to increase my score for now to a 7.5. It's not that big of an increase because even though there were little rules that I needed to have settled after that first play, I still had a good feel for the game, and I knew the way that the game played. And that hasn't really changed much. Just my understanding of certain smaller things have improved. I still don't know if Caverna is my game. I still think it may not be a game for me. I'm going to play it a few more times, we'll see. But if it settles in at that 7.5, let's face it, everyone, there are so many good board games. We are in such a golden age of board games. There's so many amazing heavy Euros out there that, and I have a lot. When we get into my upstairs space, hopefully by the end of the year, and I have, you'll see my game collection behind me. These are just my kind of medium light games. Over down there behind this camera, I have my light games. But upstairs, in what's going to become the studio space, I have all my medium, heavy, and heavy games. And those are the games that I really love, and there's a lot of them. So I have so many games that I genuinely love that I would be rating 8s and 9s. And I think in that case, I don't know if Caverna will have a lasting place in my collection. It's just a space issue. It's a decent game, but when faced against some of the games I like even more, I think I may eventually have to get rid of Caverna just to free up some space. We'll see. I need to play it more. I need to see how my opinion changes over time. This is definitely a game I think you want to get several plays into it before you create a firm opinion. So I have a good idea of what my opinion's going to be, but I'm allowing room for adjustment to that. So I'll play it a few more times. We'll see where I land. I'm feeling more and more certain that 7.5 is going to be pretty solid. It could slide up into the 8s, the low 8s, 8.0 maybe, but I think 7.5 is probably where it's going to hold. We'll see. I'll report back as time goes on. The main point in all of this is that I like Caverna a little better, understanding it better, which not surprising, right? 7.5 appears to be my score for now, and I look forward to playing it a little bit more and then seeing if it's a game that's a keeper for me or not. Now, I played the Loop 4 times this period. I'd played it before a few times with my then fiance, now wife, Kristen. She did not love the game. I think there were just a little bit too many moving parts for her. It created some anxiety. So I'm just playing it solo now, and I'm really enjoying it. It's definitely a lighter co-op. I think I'm getting rid of my Forbidden Island game because I have Horrified, which I think is a much better, more fun game. Forbidden Island still has its place, but I don't play a lot of really light co-ops. I don't have a lot of kind of non-gamers or very light gamers that I'm looking for those kinds of games to play with. And I think Horrified really is all I need. I don't think I need the Forbidden series as well. I kind of like it. I just never get it to the table because I'm always looking for something more. So I think Horrified is going to be a keeper. The Loop I was really on the fence with, but I'm really enjoying the Loop. And I think even for heavier gamers, there is so much going on in terms of the card selection and the way you use those to make your powers work. There are 4 different scenarios in the base game. You have 5 different characters that you can play with. If you're playing solo, you can play with, I believe, 2 to 4 characters. And each scenario has 3 different difficulty levels. So if you start to play it and you get really good at it, you can up the difficulty level. There's a lot of game in the box. There's also an expansion that's come out fairly recently with some new characters and I think some new scenarios. So I'm not really interested in getting that. I'm enjoying the Loop a lot as a solo game. And I think it's something that I may actually stream eventually once I get the Twitch channel up and running, because it's just such a fun game. It's a fun game to watch. The components are kind of cool to look at. My one caveat with it, I think, is that it is a lighter game. I'd probably put it at maybe medium light, whereas I think Horrified and the Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert games are light. And there are a lot of fiddly rules in the Loop. So I don't know if that is a cooperative game that I would introduce to someone right as I'm kind of introducing them to games and co-ops. There are just enough moving parts. I think you'd kind of give them the general rules, and then there'd be too many times you'd have to say, oh, but wait, in this situation, there's this rule. And wait, over here, there's this rule that comes into play in this situation. I think there's enough of that in the Loop that it's something you might not want to introduce to new gamers. And at the same time, it is a lighter co-op. As I said, the gameplay loop in the Loop is so fun and so compelling that, for me anyway, as a heavier gamer, it still holds a lot of appeal. So I think the sweet spot for the Loop is more medium weight gamers. Unfortunately, with my friends, they really tend towards heavy Euros or story and dungeon crawling games. And the lighter games are games I generally play with Kristen, and it's not something that she enjoys. So it's a little weird. It's a game that I like, that I'm going to be keeping in my collection for a while. I love it. I think there's a lot of crunchiness, enough for me to enjoy, but it seems like at this point in time, it's probably going to be mostly a solo game for me, which I'm okay with for the time being. But that may mean that, once I go through it and I play all the scenarios and I play some different difficulty levels, it could be a game that I eventually put aside and have it leave the collection, because I have so many other really good games and interesting co-ops that can be played solo or with groups that ultimately probably have more going on than the Loop, even though I'm really enjoying the Loop. So I think I'm giving the Loop a score of an 8.5, which actually is very high for me for a game like this. And the only thing that's probably going to have it end up leaving my collection is the fact that once I exhaust the solo play, there's not going to be much else that I can do with it with the gamer friends that I have and the groups that I play with. But I think if you are in the market for a medium light to medium co-op and you have other friends that also enjoy those kinds of games, your rating for the Loop may be much higher than mine. You may even go up all the way to a 10. It's really cool. It's got a lot going for it. The variable player powers for the various characters are interesting. The hand management system is really neat. There's a cleverness and intelligence to the way the game is written and the cards are written and just the sensibility behind it. It's so much fun. So I'd recommend it to anyone. And definitely if you are kind of playing light to medium light stuff and you enjoy co-ops, run out and pick this one up and see what you think. It's a really solid co-op, and the more I play it, the more I like it, which really speaks towards it a lot. So 8.5 on the Loop. The third game that I played this period is Splendor. I played that one a few weeks ago and talked about it at that time as well. Splendor is just a solid little engine building kind of mathy game where you are acquiring gem tokens and then using those gem tokens to buy cards. All of the cards will have gem icons on them, and those will allow you a discount when you are getting cards in the future. And if you get the right combination of them, they'll also allow the kind of ultra goal, these nobles, once you've collected the right sets of gems on those cards, to acquire the nobles. There's also points on some of the cards, and there's points on the nobles. So you're kind of getting gem tokens to get cards, which will allow you to get more cards and the nobles, and the cards and the nobles have points. So ultimately you're trying to get points. It's 15 points in a game. It's such a solid engine building game. It definitely appeals to people with a math sense. And if you're that kind of person, it's sort of an evergreen. However, it is also kind of simplistic in what it's doing. And so you can go beyond, I think, Splendor and be ready for something more. As much as I like it, and I think it's such a solid game to come back to, it is kind of limited in what it's doing. And certainly, like, you might get to a point where you think, well, this is a great central mechanic, but I kind of want more than this. I want a game where this is the main mechanic, but there's a lot more happening all around the edges. So I think that's the one kind of time where Splendor might not be enough game for somebody, but it's such a good, well-structured, solid design of a game that it just withstands the test of time. And I don't have a copy of it in my collection. You can play it on Board Game Arena, which is a great place to play it. I don't think it's a game that I'll be acquiring into my collection, but I do think it's a game that I'll be coming back to again and again from time to time on Board Game Arena. So for me, this one definitely falls in the 7-point range. There's just not enough game there for it to land in the 8s. And I think I'm going to stay consistent with the rating that I gave it a video or two ago, and Splendor is going to land at a 7.0. So that means we're finishing this week with Caverna at a 7.5, the Loop at an 8.5, and Splendor at a 7.0. Now let's move forward and talk about the 3 campaigns that are going to be funding during this week that I think you should either be reminded about or be alerted to if you're not aware of these campaigns. Because in my opinion, these 3 campaigns are the best ones that are going to be funding next week. I try to be very selective in my process. So there's actually 3 games I was considering including that I decided not to because I didn't think that they quite made the cut. However, there is still good things about those games and they may appeal to some people. So I'm just going to name those games and I will put links down below in the description section with the other 3 games that I actually am covering, because there may be people that these games appeal to, They still look interesting to me. They're just not quite good enough for me to want to cover them in full. Those three games are Frozen Frontier, Redwood, and Rhone Invasion. Frozen Frontier is kind of a space game where you're doing some worker placement and you're moving things around a board for resource generation. I think in the end, I thought that the engine building was a little too simplistic on a smaller scale. It's from the makers of Smartphone, which is a game that I think is on a very surface level solid, but maybe too simple and a lot of things I didn't like about it. So, same people, if you like Smartphone, maybe Frozen Frontier is a game for you. Redwood is a game, it looks like it has some pretty cool table presence, it's very cute, it's another kind of nature-themed game. I just didn't think it was a good enough game and there was enough game there for me to really kind of cover it in full. But there are so many good nature games coming out that are beautiful. It's a busy market right now. I think there are a lot of them that are better than what I think Redwood looks like, but Redwood still does have a lot of appeal to it. So if you like that kind of a game, you might want to go and check it out. The third game is called Rhone Invasion. This is kind of a deck building fighter game. You can fight against each other or, fight against a monster. It reminds me of Aeon's End or Ascension, and I just think I'd rather play Aeon's End. I'd rather play Thunderstone Quest, which are my two favorite deck builders in that genre. And while Rhone Invasion looked okay, it's just, again, such a busy field with some really, really good games out there. Astro Knights is going to be delivering soon from the makers of Aeon's End, which is very much like Aeon's End, but with a different skin to it. And so Rhone Invasion, just in my opinion, from what I've seen so far, doesn't kind of stand up to the best of the games in the genre. So these three games didn't quite make the cut for me, but they might make it for you, particularly if that genre of game or that type of game is really appealing to you. I know for me, if it's a genre of game that I like, my standards go down a little bit. If it's a dungeon crawler, I might play a dungeon crawler that's not as good as compared to a genre that I don't like, where I need it to be a really, really good game if I'm going to buy it or play it, because it's in a genre I don't love, so it has to kind of stand above the rest. So if one of these genres is kind of more in your wheelhouse, you might want to go and check them out. Also, let me know in the comments if you think it's good for me to kind of include the games that didn't quite make the cut. I'm not sure if it's going to happen in every video. There's definitely a gray area sometimes in terms of games that I want to cover, games that I don't want to cover, and then the ones that are on the line. So I don't want to feel obligated to make that a category every week. But if there are, in the future, games that don't quite make the list, maybe it's worth it just to give them a mention. Okay, the first game that I'm actually covering this week is called Deep Madness, Madness Reborn, and Reprint. This one had a minimum required funding goal of $100,000. They're currently sitting around $305,000, which is about 3 times that minimum required funding goal. Deep Madness, Madness Reborn, and Reprint is going to complete its funding on Tuesday, October the 25th. This is a game for 1 to 6 players, plays in about 60 to 120 minutes. Complexity on the game is heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with the campaign at medium-high. Now, this is a dungeon crawler. Instead of having zombies in it, though, that is often the case in a lot of dungeon crawlers, or a fantasy theme, it seems to be those are the two big ones, zombies and fantasy. This is sort of a Lovecraft and aliens-inspired dungeon crawler, and it takes place underwater in these kinds of underwater sea stations. So you'll have a team of explorers going down to try to figure out what's happening with these underwater structures. Spoiler alert, there's monsters down there, and they're sort of Lovecraftian-esque sea zombie type creature monsters, right? It's its own spin, but it draws from a lot of other things as well. And it's not so much reinventing the wheel as reskinning it. Now, this newest campaign here, the thing that's being featured, it's Madness Reborn. What that is, there is a guy, a super fan out there who loves Deep Madness so much that he created 7 scenarios. So they've collected them together and they've published them. Now, there are a few other people that are involved with this, but it's not clear in the marketing whether those other 4 people are artists or just people who are helping kind of behind the scenes creating it in various ways. So I don't really have any artists to talk to you about in relation to this campaign that I know of for sure. So when I mention the artists, I am going to be talking about the artists on the original game because everything's getting reprinted with this, everything's being offered. So the designer for this new 7 scenario series is named Phil Blake, and then the original game, the original core box, and some of the expansions that have been done previously, they've been designed by Chauncey and by Roger Ho. And Roger Ho also worked on Dawn of Madness, which is another game that's coming from Dimension Games, the same publisher, set in the same universe. But Dawn of Madness takes the kind of monsters and characters and things, removes them from that dungeon crawler setting, and puts them more into like an exploration type game that has a lot in common with like Etherfields and Tainted Grail. But it has this sea creature, underwater, Lovecraftian horror vibe to it, which makes it a little bit different than Tainted Grail and Etherfields. It's a different type of environment and theme to it. But it's much more like those games, Dawn of Madness I'm talking about now, whereas Deep Madness is a dungeon crawler set in that world. So the artists who've worked on the original games that I want to at least give a mention to here, because it's very possible that some of these artists are also working on this new expansion with these 7 fan-created scenarios, are Roberto Chaldon, Joseph Diaz, who previously worked on the game called Harakiri Blades of Honor, also D-Rock Art, Gaudier Giroux, who's previously worked on Claustrophobia 1643 and Mythic Battles Pantheon, Gael Gouman, who's worked on Shadows of Brimstone, City of the Ancients, Shadows of Brimstone, Swamps of Death, and A Touch of Evil, the Supernatural game, Steph Kopinski, who's worked on Mythic Battles Pantheon, The Others, and Project Elite, Guillaume H. Pongaluppi, who's worked on Mythic Battles Pantheon, Reichbusters, Project Vril, and Solomon Kane, Pedro Sena, who's worked on Dawn of Madness, and Chang Yuan. And the game is being published by Dimension Games, who also has Dawn of Madness coming in the pipeline. That one ran on crowdfunding a few years ago. They're still in the process of redesigning it and hopefully eventually delivering it. And another game that has already delivered called Twisted Fables. Now, like Tainted Grail Kings of Ruin last week, this is the campaign that's sort of the biggest with the most information to go over. Not as much as Tainted Grail, but this is the big campaign of the week just in terms of information. So we have a bunch of pledges to go through, and we have some add-ons. For $85, you can pledge Crawling Core. That's going to get you the new core game, the new core game for Deep Madness. Now, they've also kind of redesigned a lot of the rule books and things like that, so there will be opportunities to get upgrade kits, and there are a couple different ones, and we'll go over those when they come up. For $99, you can pledge Madness Reborn. That is the new expansion. That's going to get you this new campaign that has 7 different fan-created scenarios in it. For $124, you can pledge Returning Madness. That will get you the new expansion, and it will also get you an upgrade kit for the original game. Now, in their text, when they're talking about the upgrade kits on Kickstarter, they keep saying in various places that it includes a new copy of the Deep Madness box, core box. It took me a while to figure this out because of the way it's phrased, and the language is a little unclear, but that does not mean that you're getting a new copy of the core game. No. You are actually getting the core box. So just the box. Now this comes with an upgrade kit. So the idea here is that you already own the core game, but you're going to be getting the new rule books and all of the non-plastic components. So no plastic components. You already have to have the miniatures, which you'll have if you have the new game, but they're upgrading the rule books and all the cards and all those kinds of things. And they're also giving you a copy of the new box. So you'll be able to take your old stuff, switch it over to the new box. So when you're playing, you'll have the box that represents your new version of the game with all of the upgraded cards and the rule books, but you're not getting a full copy of that core game, the new core version. You're just getting the box and all of the non-miniature components. Now for $149, you can pledge Returning to Madness All In. This is very similar to the last pledge. So it'll get you the new expansion, Madness Reborn, and it's going to give you an upgrade kit and that box, just the box. The difference here, though, is the upgrade kit is going to include upgrades for everything in Deep Madness. So if you've gone all in to Deep Madness in the past, you're going to get all of the cards, all of the new rulebooks for everything. But again, you won't be getting any of the new miniatures. So you'll still be using all of the miniatures from your first edition of the game. I don't think those have changed at all, which is why you don't need new miniatures. But they will be giving you upgrade kits that represent all of the rulebooks and all of the cards for all of the Deep Madness stuff, all of the previous expansions and the base game. And of course, you'll be getting a new core box. Not the core game, just the core box. Now, if you're someone who doesn't have Deep Madness, you didn't pledge it in the past, and you're really interested in this campaign and you want to kind of go all in and get all the stuff, this is the first pledge where you're going to really be getting a lot of stuff. It's not just upgrade kits, you're going to be getting all of these expansions. It's $329. It's called Kadath Without Faces, and it's going to include almost all of the expansions, but there's an expansion called the Faces of the Sphere, which is intended to be used both with Deep Madness and Dawn of Madness. So it has miniatures and cards that go with those miniatures, and it can be used in both games. That is not included in this pledge. Almost everything else is. So you'll be getting the new version of the core game. You'll be getting the first two expansions called Endless Nightmares and Uncounted Horrors. Endless Nightmares had 3 additional scenarios, some new miniatures, a lot of new cards and things to work with the game. Uncounted Horrors only had 1 scenario. It's called the True Ending scenario. I kind of liken that to a video game when you're playing a video game and you play through the different endings and you want to get to the true ending. This is the true ending for Deep Madness. And of course, it has more miniatures and more cards and a lot of other things in it to just make your game more variable and have more stuff. So you're not just playing the same thing with the same cards coming up over and over. It kind of broadens what the game does. You'll also be getting this new fan-created expansion, Madness Reborn, and then you'll get 2 other expansions that have been produced previously, and each of them comes with an additional investigator, and so you'll get stuff for that investigator. It gives you a new character that you can use in the game with stuff for that character. So you'll be getting the Rise of Dagon expansion with the Ward Phillips character pack, and 3 new scenarios, 26 more miniatures. You'll also be getting the Oracle's Betrayal expansion, which comes with the John Murdoch character pack, and 3 more scenarios in that expansion, and 26 more miniatures in that expansion. So this pledge represents all of that gameplay, but it doesn't include that expansion that kind of can be used with both Deep Madness and with Dawn of Madness. If you want to also get that, then you'll pledge the next level up, $359. It's just called Kadath. And that'll get you everything that we just talked about, plus that expansion that you can use with both games. Now, there are 2 more pledges to go over. The first is $369. It's called the Gameplay All-In without Kadath. So again, you won't be getting that kind of dual game expansion in, but this pledge will give you everything else that we've mentioned previously, and it's going to add in all of these additional monster packs. So most of these monster packs are just one big kind of boss monster that you can add to the game. It has cards and things with it, and each one comes separately in its own box. So there's Devourer of Worlds, Spawn of the Sleeper, Dimension Rift, Insidious, Penitent and Forsaken, so that one actually comes with 2 miniatures that kind of work together, Drifter King, and Omega Ravenous. So you'll get all the stuff we talked previously, and then all of those additional monster packs. Now, if you want all of that stuff, and you still want that Kadath expansion that can be used with both Deep Madness and Dawn of Madness, you want to go to the final pledge level. It's $399, and it's called the Gameplay All-In. From there, let's go to the add-ons. So for $30, you can get the Investigator Upgrade Kit. That is the upgrade kit that's going to give you the new rulebooks and all of the new cards for the base game only. And the new box, not the whole game, just the box. So it really is the entire new version of Deep Madness, the core box, but without the miniatures. For $60, you can get the All-In Upgrade Kit. That's going to do the same thing, but with all of the previous expansions. So you're getting all of the rulebooks, all of the cards. You're getting the new core box. You're not getting the new game, though, because you're not getting the miniatures that would come with the new core version of the game. And you're not getting any of the miniatures or the other boxes for the other expansions. You're just getting the rulebooks and all of their updated cards and things. For $20, you can add on The Art of Deep Madness, which is, I believe, a hardcover art book. I know it's an art book. I believe it's hardcover. For $25, you can get the Shattered Seas novel. So that's a novel that's been written in this world of Deep Madness and Dawn of Madness. For $30, you can get the Profundum storage box. So this is a giant box that's going to hold all of the content for Deep Madness that does not include the miniatures. So theoretically here, you could just get the upgrade kit, which is going to have all the cards and all those things. And then this box will be able to hold all of that because you're not getting the boxes for the additional expansions. So you won't have that storage space. But this big case will hold all of the content for all of Deep Madness, not including the miniatures. If you want something for those, then you want to pledge $50 for the Monstrum storage box, and that will hold all of the miniatures. And it's got lots of kind of padding and stuff inside it, so it'll sit well and it'll hold them well. But if you're really trying to go all in for Deep Madness, you probably want to get these two big storage boxes. One of them will hold all of the content, not including the miniatures, and the other one will hold all of the miniatures. For $6, you can add on the 3D Locked Hatch Pack. These are essentially miniatures that are doors. So they're plastic doors. In previous versions of the game, they're just cardboard doors. So these will give you plastic doors. It's an upgrade. There are 3 different dice packs that you can add on. Each of them include 9 6-sided dice and 1 12-sided die. The first one's just for $10. It's called Dice Pack. The second one is for $10. It's called Enlightened Dice Pack, and it just looks a little bit different. I think it may glow in the dark. It looks like it may glow in the dark, but don't hold me to that. But it has just a different design on the dice. They're different colors. Finally, for $10, you can add on the Fusion Dice Pack. And again, it's just a different design for the dice. These look a little cooler to me, but you may not need extra dice at all. For $50, you can add on the Rise of Dagon expansion. This has 26 more miniatures, 3 new scenarios, and this is the one that comes with the Ward Phillips Investigator Pack. For $50, you can get the Oracle's Betrayal expansion. Again, 26 new miniatures, 3 new scenarios, and this is the one that comes with the John Murdoch Investigator Pack. For $25, you can get the Faces of the Sphere expansion. That has 9, in my opinion, really cool miniatures with cards and things to use with them. And this is the one that can be both used in Deep Madness and the upcoming soon, maybe not too soon, but hopefully soon to deliver Dawn of Madness. And that's the game that looks like a Deep Madness themed take on Etherfields or Tainted Grail. Then we've got all of the monster packs that you can add on, and we're kind of gonna list them in order going from most expensive to least expensive. So for $18, you've got Devourer of Worlds. Also at that price, Spawn of the Sleeper, and Penitent and Forsaken. And again, Penitent and Forsaken is 2 miniatures that kind of work together. For $16, you can add on the Insidious Epic Monster Pack, and that one is kind of spider-like, so it comes with 6 additional little egg miniatures. Also for $16 is Drifter King. For $15 is Omega Ravenous, and for $14 you can get Dimension Rift Epic Monster Pack. From there, we've got some translation upgrades. So if you're getting this in a different language, you want to get a translation pack in your language. $15 is the translation pack that covers the core game, Endless Nightmares, and Uncounted Horrors. And then for $5 each, you can get translation packs for Madness Reborn. That's the new 7 fan scenarios. Also, there's a $5 translation pack for the Oracle's Betrayal and a $5 translation pack for Rise of Dagon. Now, in the continental US, they have estimated their shipping prices at $21, $25, $38, and $50. I believe $21 is the shipping for either the Crawling Core or the new Madness Reborn pledges. $25 is for Returning to Madness, the Investigator Pledge, or Returning to Madness All In. $38 is your shipping estimate for Kadith Without Faces or Kadith. And $50 is your shipping estimate for Gameplay All In Without Faces or the Gameplay All In Pledge. Dimension Games is currently planning on delivering Deep Madness, Madness Reborn, and Reprint in August of 2023. From there, we go to Harrow County, the game of Gothic conflict, which had a minimum required funding goal of $54,000. They're currently at $163,000, which is again about 3 times that minimum required funding goal. Harrow County is going to complete its funding on Thursday, October the 27th. This is a game for 1 to 3 players. It's got kind of an odd player count. Plays in about 45 to 120 minutes. The complexity on the game looks to be medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. Now, this is a hard game to kind of pin down in terms of its mechanics. It's horror themed. It's based on a graphic novel, comic books. It's got a cube tower in it. There's deduction, there's pick up and deliver. But it is kind of like Root or Merchant's Cove to some degree, where you're going to be playing different characters. Either in a 1 to 2 player game, you'll be playing one of these kind of 2 main characters that are antagonistic, and they each have their own set of mechanics and rule sets. So you're going to be playing against each other, and then you can either throw in this third character who you kind of both have to deal with, or you can have a third person play that character. So the mechanics are different from character to character, but we're going to choose the cube tower as the central mechanic here, because you are going to be using that no matter how you play the game, and they're going to be cubes that come out and kind of affect the different characters. And the cube tower for this game is actually built into the box. So you kind of put these cubes in the box and it comes out the side of the box. So you'll actually be using the box as you play as your cube tower. Interesting, right? It's designed by Jay Cormier, who's best known for Akrotiri, Belfort, In the Hall of the Mountain King, Junk Art, and Mind Management, or some people may just call it Mind MGMT. And this game is being published by the same publisher that published Mind Management. It's Jay Cormier's company, and it was founded to publish Mind Management. So this is essentially their second game. And it feels like there's deduction in this one as well. So it feels like it's kind of been designed from a similar place, although they've taken it to the kind of gameplay of Root, where you're playing these variable player powers. But I do think it has a lot in common with Mind Management. It is from the same new publisher, and it feels like a mechanical spiritual cousin, I guess. The game is co-designed by Shad, and the artist on the game is named Tyler Crook. Finally, it's published by Off the Page Games. That is Jay Cormier's company, and they previously published Mind Management, or Mind MGMT, the psychic espionage game. Now, this is not too complex in terms of the structure of the campaign. There are 3 different pledge levels that you can pledge at. For $61, you can get the retail version of the game. That's just going to be your kind of base version of this game, and this is what will show up and be sold at retail. For $94, you can pledge the deluxe edition. That's going to upgrade the resources in the game to wooden resources. There'll be these wooden tiles that you use, plastic storage tray system that will be included at that pledge level, as well as the Fair Folk expansion. If you pledge $121, which is the Satchel Edition, you'll get some metal tokens. So in the deluxe version, these little cardboard tiles that you're placing out for various reasons are upgraded to wood, but in the Satchel Edition, those tiles are upgraded to metal tokens. And then you'll also be getting this cardboard satchel carrying case, which has thematic art and a cloth strap that looks like a corpse's arm. So it creates a very kind of unique carrying case for the game, a storage case for the game. But the only real upgrades that you're getting at that level are that carrying case and those upgrades to those metal tile tokens. Now, there is one final pledge level. It's $180. It's called Satchel plus hand-signed poster, and it's exactly that. You're going to be getting the Satchel Edition, and you'll also be getting a poster of the game hand-signed. The shipping estimates for Harrow County are $18, $20, and $24, so those are the estimates for each of the first 3 pledges. The pledge with the signed poster is still going to be $24 because you're just getting a poster. There's only one additional thing being thrown in at that price point. Finally, Off the Page Games is planning on delivering Harrow County next year in October of 2023, hopefully just in time for Halloween. Our final campaign of the week is Wonderland's War, Shards of Madness. This had a minimum required funding goal of $50,000. They're currently at about $504,000, which is 10 times the minimum required funding goal, so that makes it the biggest multiplier of this week. Also, the game that's been funded with the most cold hard cash. Now, Wonderland's War, Shards of Madness is going to complete its funding on Friday, October the 28th. This is a game for 2 to 5 players, plays in about 45 to 125 minutes. The complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium low. Thematically, what's going on here is you're playing various characters in Alice in Wonderland's world, and you are going to the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, and there's kind of a series of mechanics that you'll do while you're at that tea party trying to get kind of set collection and power up your characters. And then you'll be sort of fighting a war game, but it's based on area majority. However, based on the things that you're doing around the tea party, I think the central mechanic here would be considered bag building. It's designed by Ben Eisner, who's previously worked on the Grim Masquerade, Tidal Blade's Hero of the Reef, and the original Wonderland's War. Also, Ian Moss, who's worked on Dulosaur Island, News at 11, and the original Wonderland's War. The artist is Manny Tremblay, who you may know from his Dice Throne work. He's worked on Dice Throne Season 1, Dice Throne Season 2 Battle Chest, Radlands, and of course the original Wonderland's War. Finally, the game's being published by Druid City Games. They have published a lot of those Ben Eisner games, The Grim Masquerade, Tidal Blade's Heroes of the Reef, and Wonderland's War. Now, this campaign is really just a reprint of the game, I think. It's sort of an excuse to reprint the game because it's not going to retail. And this game has been fairly popular. I've seen people talking around social media about this game in the same way that they have in the past about things like Scythe or Dwellings of Eldervale. This seems to be a game that, bigger groups of people are really enjoying, and it has a lot of not just table presence, because it does have kind of nice chips and art and things like that. Manny Tremblay has great art, but just a lot of kind of raucousness around the table. Like, it's designed to be fun. I know some people aren't loving the game because they think the strategy isn't tight enough and there's luck in the game. And I think James Hudson, who runs Druid City Games, would even say, okay, yeah, he didn't really design this to be a heavy strategy Euro. It's designed for kind of larger groups to play around the table and have a lot of, stand up and cheer, fun kind of moments. So hopefully it delivers on that front. But if you're looking for a very kind of no luck, no take that, kind of heads down Euro, this isn't that game. This is more of a big fun around the table game that's war game and bag building. So the new thing offered here is rather small. Again, I think they're doing this just to get the game out there again to these kinds of groups who want to play the game, who can't find it at retail. So the new thing that's being offered is $15. It's called the Shards of Madness mini expansion, and it comes with 35 new cards. I think the idea here is that if you're playing the game and you're loving the game, but you're starting to see, the same cards coming around again, and maybe your strategies are getting a little repetitive, this will throw 35 new cards into the game to freshen up your experience. For $50, you can get the premium chips. I liken this to kind of Too Many Bones chips. So if you've been playing the game, you have cardboard chips. These will give you thicker, more tactile chips that are hopefully more fun to play with. They also come with a magnetic box, so a magnetic clasp, a container for those nice premium chips. If you only want a copy of the game itself, that's $115. It's called Wonderland's War Deluxe. And for $180, you can pledge for all three of those things. So you'll get the deluxe version of the game, the premium chips, and the new Shards of Madness mini expansion. You can also add on things. So maybe you've got the game before, but there are certain other things that you want. For $50, you can just get those premium chips as an add-on. For $15, you can get the Shards of Madness mini expansion as an add-on. There's no real reason to do the base game as an add-on because there's two pledges that already cover that. One is a pledge for the base game itself. One is a pledge for the base game with the chips and the Shards of Madness mini expansion. So the remaining add-ons aren't really gameplay related, except for one that's a little bit gameplay related. But for $20, you can get art prints and a narrative booklet. For $15, you can get the promo Wonderlandians, so a few more Wonderlandians that you can use in the game. For $12, you can get a full art poker deck. So essentially this is a set of playing cards with Manny Tremblay's Wonderland's War art on them and the characters from Wonderland's War. For $20, you can get art-themed playmats. Now, these are not player mats. These are nothing that you really use in the game, but these are just big playmats with the art of the game on them, so you can use them to play your game on this playmat or use them for other things as well if you like. Finally, for $5, you can add on 2 updated player boards that have been changed a little bit since the original printing of the game. These are the player mats for Jabberwocky and the Mad Hatter. Shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $6, $23, $25, and $38. So each of those shipping estimates corresponds to each of those 4 pledges. Finally, Druid City Games is planning on delivering Wonderland's War Shards of Madness in June of 2023. So last week we talked about a whole bunch of games. 2 of them are games that I actually did pledge myself. One of them was Daybreak, which is a new game from the designer of the Pandemic series, Matt Leacock, and it's looking at climate change and trying to stop climate change from happening by taking, green actions and doing things. So it's not a reskin of Pandemic, but it uses a lot of those kind of concepts and ideas with new mechanisms. And the game itself is being produced through Green Initiatives. So it's a new take on Pandemic. It's got some really appealing art. And I also have a game called CO2 Second Chance, which was designed by Vital Lacerda. That game has players creating new green power plants to replace fossil fuel plants. This game to me feels like sort of a smoosh of those 2 games. So you've got the climate theme behind it, just like CO2 Second Chance, but then you've got the cooperative element, the working together, and the Pandemic style gameplay of trying to stave off all of these kind of waves of things that are happening and realistically in the world, but it's gamifying it. And in that sense, it is, I never thought that the Pandemic games are a tower defense game, but in a way they kind of are. You're just trying to stave off waves of kind of negative conditions. So it is similar to Pandemic Legacy. It's the same designer. It's got really appealing art. I like the climate theme behind it, and it's being produced through green means. So it felt like a game that I wanted to back for multiple reasons, so I did. The other game that I backed was Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin. I have actually pledged that one before. I have a lot of the stuff already, but they had done some updates to things in the old versions. They were also offering some things that applied to the old version of the game that hadn't been accessible before, things that were produced after the fact. There was like a Dice Tower promo pack. There were a few other kind of smaller upgrades that were produced after the fact. I also had never picked up the second miniature set that came with the original game, the Monsters of Avalon Past and Future. So I got that one, and then I got the new stuff. I'm really looking forward to playing Tainted Grail, and I think it's going to be a game that Kristen and I are really going to enjoy together. It seems very well designed for a 2-player count. I think, though, we'll probably play Etherfields first, just because I'm going to wait, since I have not started Tainted Grail at all, and some of the things in this new campaign are updated rule books and different modes of playing that are a little less grindy, a little more forgiving, and change and tweak the rules in different ways. I think I'm just going to wait to start Tainted Grail until that new Kings of Ruin package comes in, which is a ways off. It's at least a year off at this point. So I think we'll do Etherfields first, and those are both games I'm hoping to play live streaming on Twitch once we get the Twitch channel up and running. I have 2 new acquisitions this period as well. The first one is Endless Winter Paleoamericans. It's the new Stan Kordonsky game. He is tearing it up right now. Every game that he puts out seems to be better than the last. And at least the time when this was produced felt like his magnum opus. Like everything had kind of been leading to Endless Winter. Just a really cool, well-produced, crunchy, heavy Euro with this native theme and lots of really interesting plastic pieces. He's done a couple games since then. I also backed his game Resurgence. That one hasn't shipped yet. I don't know if Resurgence will surpass Endless Winter because Endless Winter looks so good for what it is. I think when he did Resurgence, I think he pulled back a little bit because he also used that campaign to launch his new publishing company. So I don't know if Resurgence will top Endless Winter. I don't think it's trying to, though. I think it's doing something a little bit different. And I'm also very excited for Resurgence, but I think I am most excited for Endless Winter. So I need to get that game punched, hopefully played soon. The other game that came in was the new Awaken Realms game, ISS Vanguard. And this is the one that has kind of all these books of cards. So you're gonna be exploring different planets. You'll be doing things on your ship, then you'll be going down planet side, doing things on planets. And as you get different cards, you kind of slot them into these folders. It's sort of a new gaming system. No one's really done anything quite like it. No one's made binders, the central component for board games, but I really like the idea. Awaken Realms has been doing such a good job on almost every game that they've produced. And I like the kind of space exploration theme, and just what they were doing mechanically really intrigued me. So this is another game that I hope to eventually feature, streaming on Twitch, and it's a game that I'm really kind of jonesing to get played myself. So that brings us to the end of the video. Before I go though, I have something like 7 different campaigns I'm looking at for next week's video, but none of them are huge standouts for me, so I'm not going to name any specifics because I don't know that any specific game will make the cut. I haven't drawn that cut yet. But at this time, there's 7 games that I'm looking at. I don't think there'll be more because it's a week off. There probably won't be any new campaigns launched that will also be funding in that period. Quick little channel update. So for those of you who don't want to watch it, goodbye, see you later. I'm saying some of the same things that I've said in the past, which is that I'm currently in process right now to get this studio going upstairs. And once I do, I'm going to be launching a Patreon. I'm going to be streaming on Twitch. I'm going to go back to doing teach and review videos, and I'll be doing those with better and new camera equipment and lighting. And this ring light that I'm using right now is the first new acquisition towards that end. Now, some of that process of kind of getting that space upstairs ready has been slow because I have a lot of books and I need to get rid of some of my books that I don't read anymore. I've already read. I have a comic book collection. I'm going to be selling off a lot of that to free up space. I have a bunch of board games I need to sell. I just have too many, so I need to pare that down. And I have a lot of video games that I need to sell as well. So there's just kind of a lot of work-intensive stuff that needs to happen in terms of debulking that room and getting it camera ready. I already have shelves in there. I have all of my heavier games up there. It's starting to look really good, but I need to get all of that other media out. I haven't had a chance to really buckle down and do that for the last few months because I got married. I took a honeymoon. Then I went to see my parents with my new wife in Buffalo, and we hadn't gone out there to see them well, since my sister died. She had a terminal illness, and that happened a year or two before the pandemic, and we didn't want to go and right back to Buffalo right afterwards. We tried to spend a couple years getting my parents out. So right after she passed away, that first Christmas we went down to Houston, and then my parents came out here for a year or two, and then the pandemic hit. So we just haven't been back. We needed to go back. I needed to visit my parents. So we did that trip. And then this weekend, I'm going to be going to Catalina for a few days for a trip for both my wife Kristen's birthday and sort of the anniversary of our meeting. So we've been celebrating that as our anniversary until now. We probably won't celebrate it in future years because we'll actually have a wedding anniversary. But there's just been a lot of trips. And so that means that the time that I do have, I'm kind of playing catch up and crunching and trying to keep up with these videos as well as the website that I run, which is called Think Outside the Board. And on that website, I do daily posts kind of listing out all of the Kickstarters that launched the previous day. So that's a really good resource. I encourage you to use it. But it's meant that I haven't had a lot of time to just sit down and debulk that room. We don't have any more trips planned, and we've already kind of visited my parents this year. So we may be doing something small for Christmas, but if we do, it'll just be us. I think that means in November and December, I'm going to have extra time where I can make all that stuff happen. So that is the plan for right now. The ring light is the first piece of equipment, and hopefully moving forward, you're going to be seeing more and more improvements over the next couple months that will culminate in, hopefully by the end of the year, the launch of a Patreon channel where people will be able to help me choose which teach and review videos to produce, as well as which games to stream live on Twitch. I'm planning on doing solo stuff by myself, as well as dungeon crawlers and campaign games, both with Kristen and a couple other friends who like those kinds of games. And I think a Twitch channel is the perfect place for anything that's story driven, because as a viewer you'll get to experience the story. You're not just watching people play dry Euros. But I plan to do those as well because I really like Euros, and I think it's a good way to kind of show them off. So that Twitch channel is hopefully going to be used for a bunch of different kinds of games. I'll also be doing teach and review videos again, and then producing them on a much higher level, because I'll have new camera equipment and new lighting and new ways to kind of get in there and photograph the games. Now, I don't plan to work with publishers like you see a lot of content creators do. I think it's a way to make money, and it may be smart in that sense, but I think it also puts people in a position then where if they kind of develop this relationship with the publisher, they may not want to talk negatively about their games. Some people get around that. I think Alex at Board Game Co. does a really good job of remaining honest, but I think it does put content creators in a place where they may still have their own opinions, and they may be willing to share them in some ways, but they may want to kind of couch that a certain way, because publishers are really wanting people to market their games, right? When they hire you to do videos and things, they don't necessarily want an honest review. They want a marketer, and I don't really want to be a marketer for publishers. That's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I love games, and I want to help people, learn games and teach games and show off games. And I want people to be able to see what's out there and then make informed decisions. And I want to be able to communicate my opinions of games, which are not always the end all be all, right? I try to say sometimes like, I rate the game this, but if you like this, you might rate it higher. I just don't want that level of honesty to be compromised by working with publishers. However, that then does put me in a place where I don't have that stream of income coming in. Because I'm not well known, because I'm not out there in that way, I also haven't really developed a huge stream of income on YouTube yet. I'm still kind of slowly building to that, which means that because I have designed this website, Think Outside the Board, and I'm producing these videos with the consumer, the gamer, at the forefront of me doing this, my money needs to come from there. Everything I've been doing the last few years, and I've been doing this work full time, has been done, my own expense. I've been paying for everything. I work this full time. There's no income coming in. I've been working off of savings. So I'm hoping that once I launch the Patreon and I'm back to doing teach and review videos, there'll be more people interested, more eyes on the videos, and more people wanting to help keep the lights on and keep the channel up. And I certainly don't want to overwhelm anyone and ask people to financially support the channel if you can't. I want you to have the ability to enjoy the content for free. But at that time, if you are able to do it, it will help me keep the lights on and help me keep producing content that is being done for the gamer. Not for the publishers, but for the gamer. That is my entire purpose with what I'm doing, which is why I want to do it the way that I'm trying to do it, which creates its own series of challenges. So the main thing I think that will really kind of help people who like this content, once I do launch the Patreon, you'll have options to just be able to spend $1, $5 a month. But even those lower tier levels on Patreon will allow people the ability to vote on the content that I'm producing. So when I talk about the games that I'm acquiring into my collection, those are all the things that are really kind of going to be prime food for the content that I make. And you all will be able to say, hey, he's got these new games in. We really want to see teach and review videos for these of the stuff I have. Or, we really want to see this one streamed. So I want you all, once I get that Patreon launched, to be able to help choose what kind of content I'm creating for you. In the meantime, the best way to continue supporting me, again, is to like and subscribe and just interact, engage, leave comments, ask questions. And that's going to help me really grow the channel on YouTube, which will help increase that revenue stream, which will then make me less reliant on a Patreon. I want Patreon to be something that people who can afford to can help support the channel that way. But I don't want anyone to feel obligated or like they have to do it, because not everyone can afford to, and people should still be able to enjoy the content. So that's kind of an overall look at what I'm building and how I'm building it. And my goal here is by the end of the year to have the Patreon up, the Twitch channel streaming, and producing teach and review videos on a higher level than I have in the past, in a way that I think will really help appeal to the gamer and help them engage with the channel. Thank you very much for watching and spending some time here with me today. Until all those changes happen, I will keep coming back every week with a new Kickstarter weekly video. We'll keep looking at the campaigns that I think look really good, and hopefully that will help you not have to do so much work on your own. So you can use my website to see all of the new campaigns that launched, and then you can watch these videos to see the kind of cream of the cream, at least if, like me, you're into heavy Euros and exploration type games and dungeon crawlers, and then you're looking for the real gems among the lighter and medium light games. So until I see you next, have a great week, play lots of great games. Let's talk about those games in the comments of the video. And I'll be back next week with a new video and up to 7 more campaigns that we'll be looking at for that week. So take care, everyone, and my closing piece of advice for today, as the very loud garbage truck outside signals that it's time for me to wrap this video, is to just be a little more kind, thoughtful, and forgiving. Maybe out there in the world, but maybe just to yourself, because I think sometimes we tend to neglect ourselves and we need to start with us. So be a little more kind and considerate towards yourself, and you'll find that that kind of kindness to yourself may make you a little bit happier and just have a better experience out there in the world in general. I'll see you next time.